Okay, so we are going to conclude chapter 4 and begin chapter 5 today. And as we mentioned last week, it's one long bracket, like parentheses, but square ones, that go from the middle of chapter 4 into chapter 5. The Rabbi explained, as you mentioned, that we don't have the ending of these brackets. The brackets don't have an ending, and the Rabbi points out that it actually ends at the end of chapter 5, these brackets. And the person who was doing the editing, the printing, thought there was an extra bracket there. He didn't realize that this is extended from the previous chapter, and the bottom line is that's where it ends. Why is it in brackets, this whole end of chapter 4 and the entire chapter 5? Because we're really not going with our theme of explaining a certain point. We're really forewarning questions you might have. There's a lot of questions you might have hearing this. And the primary question you might have is the following. We just said in the previous chapter that, well, the beginning of chapter 4, that when Hashem created the world, this idea of creating something from nothing is an impossibility. When we say impossibility, not just to do it, but to understand it. The human mind can't grasp it. Now, he concluded the first part of chapter 4 saying, this is true also not only of creation, but even the aspect of creation that blocks the awareness of our source. Which means, if we would feel and see our source, for an example, the light of the sun as it's found in the sun, it wouldn't exist. We would not be able to function. We recognize and saw Hashem openly here. We couldn't function because we were overwhelmed by our source, by the reality, by the existence of Hashem. Therefore, the way we can exist is Hashem blocks that we can't see our source. In other words, we don't see godliness. We don't see this room as a bunch of words of Hashem at the moment of creation, creating it. We see it as bookcases and carpets and walls, which is how it is and appears to us in the physical realm. That's how it exists. That's how we see it. That is as much as a impossibility for Hashem. So it's like the guy who hands you a cup of coffee or a $5 bill to someone who needs it, and imagine you don't see the hand. It's one thing to go in your pocket and reach in and do the act of tzedakah. It's another thing that you shouldn't see who's giving it to you, the blocking. So in a person-to-person relationship, it's easy to imagine, you hide the person. But when the whole existence of the receiver is not just receiving nourishment, but receiving existence from the source, to hide the source is a big trick, so to speak. And that's what we explained here. Based on that, this is where we're coming from now. We have a question. What's the question? But really have. How do we have all sorts of different existences in the world? If Hashem is the essence of oneness, and Hashem is what we called Achdus HaPashat, he's not, God forbid, Achdus HaMorkav. We mentioned in the previous classes that there's two types of unity and oneness. There's a oneness that's found, for an example, in a mouse, not to be confused with the mice that run around, a mouse that is made up of various components, maybe 10, 20, 30, 40, I have no idea how it's made, but all different parts that's here. At the end, it's one thing, it's called a mouse. So this is called Achdus HaMorkav. It is a unity that comes from a composite of many, many details. That's not what Hashem is. Hashem is Achdus HaPashat. There is no details there. It's the oneness that there is a unity that's not made up of many details. It's all one. There's no parts and composites, God forbid, like other religions believe in the Trinity or other things. There is a one single God and nothing else and no parts to him. It's just a one. It's called mufshat, simple. There's no description of parts, like a cup of water or whatever you might have, where it's just one thing inside of it. Based on that, how does existence have so many different components? How does existence have so many different parts? You have angels and you have higher angels and lower angels. You have physical worlds and spiritual worlds. You have animals and you have human beings. And you have human beings, you have Jews, you have all different levels. How? Where does all the multiplicity come from? If everything came from one place and one source, at what point is there suddenly, the dividing up into the branches and the branching out to all different existences? When it comes to Chassidus, for an example, Chassidus started from the Baal Shem Tov. There was one founder of Chassidus. It wasn't like four. It wasn't like in different places in the world Chassidus was founded. It was one person. It happens to be over the next 100 years, many times the Chassidim, when one person passed away, one Rebbe, sometimes it broke up into 5, 6, 7 branches of Chassidism, and then those broke into more. And whatever city they were broken into more. But all Hasidism traces itself back to the Baal Shem Tov. How did it divide up? It's because when he passed away, some Hasidim followed the Maggid, someone here. The Alter Rebbe came, some Hasidim followed the Alter Rebbe, someone here. And each time it branched up. By the Tzemach said the 7 kids, each one became a Rebbe. And basically, until you have today, 30, 40, 50, 60, I don't know how many different groups of Chassidim. But you understand where the process happened. Where did that process happen by Hashem? Where did it go from one absolute Hashem till a multiplicity of existence? And this is what we're coming to explain here. And the insight's going to be based on one point. I'll say that point outside, and then we'll start the parentheses. The point we want to make is that until now, and we started saying this last week, and I said we'll really start this week. The point is like this. One way until now, how we saw the idea of the Shemesh and Magen, the sun and the shield, the sun on its cover, the sheath, was that the sun is, so to speak, the active, proactive, the doer, the giver. And what is the concealer? Just a blocker. And we explained the novelty last week of the blocker is fascinating. The Rebbe explains it, that it's not that there's like light doesn't come into the room. Light comes in, you just can't see it. But the bottom line is there's a concealment. So we saw it just as a simple, no dimensional, no characteristic concealment. What we're going to say is no. The concealment has tremendous character. The concealment has tremendous life. And it's not just concealment blocks it. Each aspect of concealment is called a Keli. And that Keli has dimensions and character. And depending on which Keli it comes through, like we gave the metaphor last week, I started saying about the vacuum cleaner versus the air conditioner versus the refrigerator or the heater. It's all coming from the source of light and power, the electricity coming into the building from the electricity, which we're not even going to get into the metaphors of the Tzimtzum and the transformers, etc. But coming into as electricity. How electricity functions, the vacuum cleaner, based on its character, takes the energy and harnesses it this way. So Chesed will harness it this way, Gvur this way, Tiferes this way, meaning all the aspects of Tzimtzum aren't Tzimtzum as a blank, no identity Tzimtzum. Every Tzimtzum is a Keli, a vessel of character. It's like the life force in your body, and that same life force will have the eyes that can see and the ears that can hear. How'd that happen? Because the eye is a different vessel, and the ear is a different vessel. They draw down again. And then we explained actually in Tanya that truthfully as we'll see soon in a second, that truthfully deep in its source you also have all these differences, but they're not yet identified, as we'll go into that in a few minutes. But the bottom line is that every single limb of your body has a character that takes the life force and expresses it a certain way. The intestines digest the food. It digests the food because that's what it does, but it's using the same life force of the soul. The soul gives life force, and the eyes can see, and the ears can hear, etc., etc. So the same thing is true when it comes into the vessels, which are also another word for tzimtzum, concealment. They are modify. They modify how the is expressed. I mean, the the chayes, the chesed is in this level of chesed we're talking about is just flowing, giving, and the keli, the vessel with concealment, is also concealment in my characteristic, almost like, but much better than colored glasses, colored glass cups. That each colored glass will show the water a different color, when in truth the water doesn't change. But here it's more so because when the water doesn't really interact with the glass, whereas in the case of the vacuum cleaner or the appliance, the energy does interact and become expressed. The actual what's pulling in and what's sucking in the dirt from the carpet, it's the power of the chayas. But that chayas is being harnessed by the vacuum cleaner to spin a motor and pull in, etc., the dirt. So the important key component here is that the novel thing about this section is that the tzimtzum is not a blank, boring, bland tzimtzum. It's a full of character, multi-dimensional, colorful tzimtzum, each keli giving a different purpose and different job, a different experience for the light that shines through it. Okay, well, let's see it inside. And in this, we're going to have 4 points inside this brackets. The Alter Rebbe is going to say 4 points, and that's how I see this. Okay. We're on page 158. We are halfway down. In the middle of the line starts the brackets, and as you can see, the brackets don't end until next chapter. To this now, again, the Rebbe says why it's in the brackets is because that's not the point. Now it's interesting. If you remember through Tanya, many times his footnotes are found on the page in a separate section like this, like little, like a Rashi almost, like a little thing here. Here, the Alter Rebbe actually put it in to the regular section, but with brackets, because it's much more closely related than the regular footnote. But at the same time, it's still not directly on the subject. So it's parenthetically speaking, but it's a very important parenthetical that without it you can't really go further. Whereas a lot of times the questions or things that you'll find in the Haggais and the footnotes for real, those are things that technically you can keep learning, but just if you want to understand it properly and better, you should learn the Haggah, give you a better understanding. Here, you'll be left with a question without this.
Like compliment.
Yeah, sometimes it complements it. This is integral. This is important, but it's off the point. The point we're making is something else. We're explaining how Hashem creates, but we have a question that we want to address. This idea of tzimtzum being basically contraction or concealment, the hester hachayis, and the blocking of the life force, nikra b'shem kelim, is called kelim. These are two words you have to remember. One is kelim. Kelim represents the vessels, the mediums, the channels of how light is channeled, and v'chayis atzma nikra b'shem and the light itself, the creative force itself, the power itself, that's called So we're taking two new words. Before we use the words chesed and gvura, we use the words shemesh u'magein, we use the word havaya elikim. Now we're introducing two new words, and the words are and kalim, and they're mainly synonymous. Of course, it's never exactly synonymous, because then you would need other words. We're not trying to just use a thesaurus here, or whatever the word is. We're trying to make a point. So and kalim are in that same realm of havaya and elikim, etc. And he explains, just like a vessel conceals that what's in it. Now let's take, for an example, the power of the vacuum cleaner or the power of air conditioner. You don't see there the life force where it came from. You just see a powerful engine. You see you can't see within this that this is being powered from somewhere else. You just see an engine or a refrigerator or a vacuum cleaner. It conceals a masha b'seicha, and the same thing simply with a glass or a limb, the arm. In the arm, you can't see the soul. In the eyeball, you can't see the soul. What powers the eyeball to see? What gives the hand the ability to sense and feel and touch? It's the power of the soul that gives, we know how it works, biologically and physiologically. I don't know, but somebody knows. But the reality is what powers that you can't see. It's the chayas. Similarly, the power of the tzimtzum, this concept of concealment, it conceals and covers the light, v'achayis, and the life force, hashayfeya, which flows into it. So we're saying here that these two things now, the shemesh and the magen, or the chesed and gevura, is not just a powerful force and something blocking it. It's a powerful force and another powerful force. As we'll see soon at the end of this chapter, what it means, we're going to see there are actually two powerful forces that come from very similar places, or maybe the same place, but they're equally powered. It's not like one is the power to this, and this one is the blocker. No, the blocker and the power to give life come from two very high places, and possibly the same high place, but two different dimensions of it. Now comes a line that we have to listen to carefully. Then he says like this: "Va'kelim hein hein ha'isiyos." The kelim are the letters. We're going back now. We said in the beginning, we want to understand creation. And our question was, how do we have in creation so many different existences if it all came from one Achdos HaPashut, which was not Murkav, not a composite God, but a pure God of one? How do you have so many different existences in the world? So we said, they're the vessels. The vessels do it. Where's the vessels in creation? The letters. We said at the very beginning of the chapter 1 of Shaar that what creates every single individual identity is the letters. We have a problem with that. We're not going to address this now. We'll address this maybe next week or today. We'll see if we have time. The problem is, in chapter 1, we call those letters chayes. Here we're calling them, which means Here we're calling them kelim. In the beginning of the chapter, the beginning of Shaar, we started off saying that these letters are the life force. These are the chayes that give life to every single thing. Now we're saying that they're really kelim. Which one is it? So we seem to be a little consistent, but we're not, of course. We'll get back to that. Just leave it for the cipher for now. So he says, but these are the letters. What does that mean? He says the letters is shosham hey oisies mansapach. So he wants to. I'll just tell you what he wants to say here, then we'll say it. What he wants to say is he wants to explain how are letters concealment. Maybe letters are light. Letters are expression. Letters are words. When I have something inside of me, I'm thinking an interesting idea. I'm thinking a very strong feeling and emotion. My speaking expresses it. And that's called revelation. Why is letters called concealment? Kalim means concealment. Letters should be called revelation. I have now a secret. I'm not telling you this, now I'm telling you. So it's revealed. Where do you see the aspect of concealment in letters? Now, some of this we know from previous classes and discussions, but he's going to explain it here very scientifically and practically. Why are letters called concealment? In the previous times we spoke, why is it called concealment? Because you never could fully express a thought or a feeling in words. Whenever you're going to express something in words, you're knocking out half of it or more, 90%. If I'm angry about something, really angry or really happy or really sad, whatever words I'm going to use just cheapens my feeling. I feel so sorry. It's much more than that. I'm angry. No, I'm furious. No, much more. How do you express it? Or I have a deep idea, which is a brilliant. If I was a scientist or a mathematician or somebody who's, the idea is, as soon as I express it, it could take you an hour to share a thought that's a 1 minute thought, because I want to make a point that. So words by definition are concealing. That's in general how we spoke in Tanya until now. Here he's going to explain more like basic scientifically why words are concealment, and it's based on the origin or the chief, the captains of all letters. All of the Aleph base is 22 letters. The 22 letters can be broken down into 5 categories. It's called man sepach. In davening, we have it in the Siddur. I'll show you where it is later. We have all the letters of the Aleph base, the man sepach. What's man sepach? Man sepach is 2 things unique about them. We're going to first explain the unique aspect, how it is in writing, and then how it is in speaking, because there's really 2 dimensions in writing and speaking, how they are defining or limiting. First thing is, let's do it in writing. In writing, what's man sepach are the 5 letters of the Aleph base that have a final letter. There's a final mem, man, final nun, nu, tse, final tzadik, final pei, and final chaf. Those are the 5 finals, only 5 finals. Those 5 finals are different than other letters because it says here the word stops. You never have a word continue after a final letter, except if a weird exception, a Torah where a Torah will put a certain letter in. But in general, you'll never find a word continue after the final letter, because that means end. So you see in writing how man sepach, these 5 letters signify end of a subject, end of a word, end of a something. That's a cave, that's a restriction. That's holding back, stopping. That's in writing. In speech, where do you see it? Just like you have in electricity, you said that the electricity comes into a house, it's a force of electricity, and now you could decide how to harness it, whether in a vacuum cleaner or a laptop or whatever it's going to be. The same thing you have in the power of speech. You have inside your soul the power of speech. That power of speech begins somewhere in your, I don't know if it's your diaphragm, your vocal lungs, vocal cords, somewhere it starts, and it pumps out air, it pressures it. That process really could be any letter, any word. What decides the shape in the letter? The limiting forces of 5 things. It's your teeth, it's your palate, your tongue, your chin, your lips, and your roof of your mouth. I think I got them all. Lips, tongue, teeth, palate,
and palate.
Okay. So the five part. What does that mean? Mem and the throat. Thank you. Throat's the one I'm missing. Throat. Like ch is in your throat. These 5 things will determine what sound comes out. So while the energy, like the electricity, could be anything, these 5 things in speech limit what the sound is going to be. Is it a ches or a mem? Is it a nun or a samach? You cannot say a beis or a pei without touching your lips. If you try and say a beis or a pei without closing your lips, that's not going to happen. I mean, maybe a ventriloquist. I always wonder how they do certain things. They have to really be sensitive, like acrobats in their mouth. But they have, because you got to do certain things, and they barely do it. They find ways to sort of get around it. Like, God forbid, someone who has a speech defect, who can't do certain things. Someone doesn't have teeth, God forbid, or whatever the case is. They find a way to speak despite the fact that they don't have teeth. And many people, or some people, could do it successfully. But the bottom line is these 5 things limit and quantify and qualify what the sound will be. So you see, both in writing and in speech, the letters, these 5 letters, are the controllers, the limiters, the vehicles that direct it. So that being said, shehein hey gvuras hamachalkes umafrides ahebel vakel. And the same thing you have in voice, that is these 5 aspects of these 5 letters that go into your mouth and restrict or are in your mouth, and they restrict the flow of the power of speech into one of these 5 categories. The to in the 5 different expressions or expelling words from your mouth. Let's have to create 22 letters of Hebrew, of Lashon Kodesh. So the 22 letters are all modifications within these 5 categories. That's what they are. That's point number 3. So we said so far 3 points. Point number 1 is that is chayis, and that the life is and the chayis is, and the concealment is kelim. That was the first point in the brackets. The second point in the brackets is that the kelim are also called ACAs that we had at the beginning of Tanya. They're called ACAs. The third thing is explaining the 5 core letters are mansepach. These 5 things, these 5, so to speak, restricting categories in writing or in speech in language, in letters. And the fourth point I want to say is, what's the source of that? Where does that come from? Where does that come from? Everything comes from a source. Where is the ability in your mouth to cut down and chop out certain letters and shapes that's in your mouth? Where does that come from? The source of these 5 expressions in the mouth, these restricting expressions. I just lose my line here. 1 second. Yeah, and the source of these 5 gevuros is butzina de kardonisa. The butzina de kardonisa is an extremely unusual word. I had to look this up myself and learn it because I never met this word before. Butzina de kardonisa means the candle of darkness. Now, candle of darkness, we always assume darkness.
What's Aramaic? Or
Greek? Yeah, Aramaic.
It's Aramaic.
Butzina de kardonisa.
Wow.
We assume usually darkness is the absence of light, but that's really one type of darkness, and that is darkness. Then there's another type of darkness, a much more advanced darkness, and that is the darkness that's so bright all you see is dark. Like if someone looked into the sun, you would just see dark. It would become one black. You couldn't. When light is too light, it becomes dark. There's a source of light that's so powerful, all it is appears as black. You can't see it. It's called the candle of darkness. It's not a negative. It's a positive. It's a very high level of spirituality. In the next line, we're going to express terms that I'm going to repeat them and say what they are. But obviously, these are letters. These are things I don't fully grasp what they really are. I will share it as best as I understand it. He's going to explain to you, where is this butzina de kardonisa? Where is this candle of darkness? And he explains as follows: Shehi gevur ilah the atik yemen.
Wow.
It is the higher level of gevura in atik yemen. What does that mean? We know the worlds in general divided into 4 categories: Atzilus, Beriya, Yetzira, and Asiya. Beriya is the first world of creation where everything exists as independent existence, relatively. And then you have Yetzira and Asiya, the 3 lower worlds. The higher world is called the world of animation, because it's animate. It's like when you put your hand next to a heater and you feel the warmth radiating off the heater. There isn't really a separate existence called warmth. It is the warmth you're feeling, you're feeling the heater, but you feel the heat coming off the heater. Atzilus is like it emanates. It's something which emanates. It's not a world yet where it exists separately for itself. It's just the heat that you feel off of the beginning of creation. So Atzilus is the highest of all the worlds, where it's just emanation. It's just, and then that world we say you can't really separate the kelim and the It's all one. It's all one. They're in a state of absolute unity. The light and the vessels are all one. But that's when we say the highest of all 4 worlds in general. But then we can go 1 world higher. I mean, it goes much more than 1 world higher. But you go 1 world higher is the world of Keser. Keser is like a crown that stands above it. Usually we'll use Keser within the spheres. We'll say Keser is above Chachma, but that's in the spheres itself. But within the worlds, Keser is a world for itself. On top of Keser, we know another world called Ak, Adam Kadmain. We spoke of this Maimer. No, we spoke about it in the Shabbos afternoon Maimer. So, but the bottom line is, but Keser is the world above Atzilus. In Keser, there's something called inner Keser and outer Keser. The higher level of Keser and lower level of Keser. What is that? Keser is like the adapter that puts creator and created together. So on one side, it's so one with God that it's the creative side. One is the created side, and that's like the plug, the interface between God and Atzilus. So the interface between God and Atzilus is this Keser. That on one hand, it's like the inside, the higher level is closer to God, the lower level is closer to Atzilus, and they come out. It's like an adapter that you plug in, the American side and the European side. You have an adapter to the wall. This fits this side, fits in, and it plugs. So Keser has the 2 aspects to it. The inner level, the higher level, is called Atik Yemen. The lower level is called Arich Anpin. You might have heard the expressions called Atik and Arich. Atik and Arich.
It's also the 6th line of the Spirot. Arich Anpin.
No. That's Za. That's Zer Anpin. Zer. Za. It's like big face and little face. Arich Anpin is long face. If you want to be technical, Zer Anpin is the 6 middays. When we say you're referring to, I know in the spheres, we call the first 6 midos, we call Zah. That's the male aspect of the midos. And Malchus is the feminine aspect, the masculine and feminine is Malchus. Zah and Malchus. Zah is called little face, or the 6 midos, which is Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, that's a Chayid and Yesod. And then Malchus is the feminine, the receiving aspect. Those are givers, the receiver. But that's another point. Here we're explaining that you have within the Kester, again, this is a little bit of a Kabbalistic thing. We'll take it 2 minutes to explain it, but it's good to know this. Within Kester, you have these 2 levels. When we're discussing, usually, we call them by their short names, Atik and Arich. We don't always say Atik Yemen and Arich. Atik literally means old. Atik Yemen is old days, meaning the original stuff, from the old days. That's what refers to the God side, the old days. And Arich Anpir is long face, that which begins the process of creation. But we know, just to appreciate this idea of Atik Yemen, there's a concept we know. Hashem created the world. It says Sheishis Yamim Asa. Hashem created the world in 6 days. We know that the Sheishis Yamim also means Sheishis Yamim Asa, the 6 days created. In other words, and it's exactly what you said before. The Bar Mitzvah boy says this in his mimer. It's a well-known concept that creation was done with midos. Hashem has 2 aspects of himself: seichel, intellect, and midos are emotions. There's the Chabad Chachma Bina Das aspect. On that level, Hashem doesn't need a world. But on the midos part, on Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, Hashem needs a world for a simple reason. When a person wants to think, if no one's around, it's better. If I want to use my intellect, the less people in the room, the quieter it is, the better I can think. If I want to express emotions, it helps to have someone there. I'm mad at you, I love you, I'm being kind to you. Emotions usually require a person. Like it says when we say that Bar Mitzvah Mimer, that Avraham Avinu was standing outside his tent, searching for people to be kind to. Why can't you sit at home and be kind? Because I can't. I need someone to make a cup of coffee for. I need a mother somebody. I need to be kind to somebody. Whereas Seichel, you don't need other people. So when Kabbalah explains that Hashem created the world with the 6 midos, because the 6 midos is what Hashem created the world with, because Seichel doesn't need a world. It's only the 6 midos that need another. Hashem needed someone to be kind to listen to the prayers, etc. So the Sheishis Yamim, we say, created the world. Based on that concept in Chassidus, Atik Yemen, this high level of Kesser, takes on a new meaning. Atik means disconnected also. Atik, like it says, of Ayetak, he left, or Natak is taken off. The word Ayin Tov Kuf could also mean taken away or connected. Atik Yemen, it's disconnected from the 6 days. It's a level of spirituality that has no connection to the world. It's the Atik Yemen, it's the part closer to God. Another way to understand Atik Yemen. But the bottom line is, that's in the place where it's above spheres, it's above everything. Now that we said it's above spheres, let me tell you, spheres exist there too. While it's true that it's above spheres, the spheres that exist there exist in a different dimension. Every sphere could exist in various ways. It could exist as a nucleus. It exists like in a seed of semen to create a child. If you look on a micro level with a magnifying glass, you can see DNA. There's all different levels how something can exist. So you see in the DNA of a drop of seed, you could find a tremendous amount of information. But on a deeper level, you go deeper, the further back you go, the less you'll find all those things. But it has to be there. If all that DNA appeared in the child and appeared in the seed before that, so it came from somewhere. Where did it come from? The brain of the father. There it's not a physical, there it's not biological, there it's already just a sensation. But the sensation goes down the spine. And in that sensation, it includes it all, but it's a very, very subtle, you can't point to it. That being said, let's take a moment here. So in Atik Yemen, in this higher level of Pnimius, you also have spheres. But the spheres there don't exist as independent spheres. They exist in a non-independent way. They exist as part of they don't have an identity. What that means, I don't know. I'm just repeating things that I've learned or heard. I don't really know what this means because we're talking about a very abstract level of spirituality where it's higher than Atzilus. It's in Kesser, the highest level of Kesser. But that being said, there is within there Chesed and Gevurah. And that's what that was all background to understand this point. So the Alter Rebbe now says, let's go back inside. Where is the source of these 5 Gevuros, which is the source for your mouth, able to cut certain letters out and speak differences from the power of speech? Hubutzina, the Kardanusad, comes from the candle of darkness. She Gevura Ilah, which is the higher level of Gevura, the Atik Yemen, in Atik Yemen. So I gave a whole introduction to explain to you what he's going to say here. Where is the source of this? In above Atzilus, above in Kesser, the highest part of Kesser, in the sphere of Gevura of Atik Yemen. Now, and the source of the chesed expression, who gam kein chesed atikemen, is also from there. Kidu le'edechein, that is known to those who know the secrets of the Torah, which is not me. So that concept explains a certain point. How is it possible to have two different forces? One force that's creating a undefined light, and one force that's creating with a defined power. It's really one force coming from one place with two, meaning the source of both of these things, the shemesh and the mugging, or here the and the kalim, the undefined and defined, all comes from where? Inside in Keser, in its highest source. In Atik Yemen, there you have Butzina de Kardanusa, you have the Chesed the Gvura, it has a source. And that point just tells you why these two have the power to do what they do. One is a power of creation, a power of light, and one's a power of concealment. That's not pure concealment, it's concealment like a vessel, like a body limb or a colored glass, if you want to say, or a vacuum cleaner that could define and create a certain type of expression. Now that we establish all of this, the Rebbe gets to the next point. We can only explain the next point after we understand this. So now that finishes chapter 4. Chapter 5, we'll start it off. We have a few minutes. We'll start chapter 5 because it's a really, this point is a need for chapter 5. You must. What's the next point? There's a famous concept brought down in Hasidus and the Talmud that originally Hashem wanted to create the world just with Midas Hadin. He wanted to create the world just with Midas Hadin. What does that mean? Midas Hadin simply means, before you go and define it a little more technical, Midas Hadin means Gevurah. Everything is fairness. You do good, you get a reward. You do bad, you get a punishment. It's like why we said women, usually we have women are associated with chesed. But when it comes to Kabbalah, we really associate women with din, with Gevurah. Why? Women should be chesed. Women are kinder. Women are more compassionate. No, women are more in tune to others and know what need of each other is. Din means really, I give the right amount to each place. Men, you ever see a man make breakfast and the wife's not home or take care of the grandkids? He has no idea what he's doing. Breakfast in the morning with chocolate cake or hot dogs. It makes no difference because he doesn't have the definition to say, this is the right thing to give right now. At 10 o'clock at night, they'll start to get excited. Hey, who wants popcorn? What are you doing now? It's bedtime. Come on, popcorn. It doesn't always get what's needed right now. And that's the nature. A woman understands right now the kid needs baby food. Right now he needs to have a bath and get into a calming mood. And that's how a woman functions. Therefore, there are times that will seem that a woman's being stricter when in fact she's being much more in tune to the recipient. So the original way Hashem wanted to create the world was like a woman in the sense of in the recipient way. What does the trees need? How much water? Not just spraying water everywhere. How much does the water have? What does the mountains need? What does the clouds need? How much gravity? How much little gravity? How much? And then reward and punishment. Do you earn this? Do you not earn it? Then Hashem saw, you know what's going to happen? The people can't survive. Everyone will do a good job. The animals will be fine. The mountains will be fine. But the people, if I go and give them only what they deserve, and when they're good, I reward them. When they're not good, I punish them. Ain't going to be a pretty picture. We got to mix in some chesed. It means, okay, they go anyway. I know you didn't deserve to go, you're going. Come on, take another nash. It's okay. The idea of being kind, mixing in chesed is the giving, not rachamim. That's another level, mercy. It's not that extreme, but it's chesed. It's an act of kindness, not necessarily calculated. I didn't think how much you need. That's why, by the way, when it comes to rain, we gave the metaphor a couple of times. Rain, if it was just chesed, would come down one giant block of rain that would drown the earth. The gevurah is, whoa, make it the tiny droplets. Let it come down one drop at a time. Why? Because that's how the ground can appreciate it. If you give, like in the masculine way, you just pour a bucket of water over the earth, and that's it. The women say, no. Spray it gently, little bits at a time, and that's how it's received. And that's, again, back in the same pattern of how to understand chesed and gevurah. So Hashem said, first I'll do gevurah. I'll make the world everything what it needs. And then he says, it's not going to work. I'll have to make this chesed. Now, until we said this idea of having that gevurah is a certain power for itself, or concealment is a power for itself, we couldn't understand how could you have two different types of creation. But now that we explained that chesed, light, is one type of process, gevurah, concealment, another type of process, now we could see that there's two different processes in creation. There's the shemesh, or there's bracious, or elikim, there's elikim, just din, and then there's chesed. Now we can understand why Hashem has sort of two ingredients to create the world, an ingredient and an ingredient, not an ingredient and a blocker. There's an ingredient and another ingredient. So let's see back in the chapter 5, we'll start here. Sip of coffee. When Yalzeh about this, the sages tell us in the beginning, Hashem's thought was, his plan was, he would create the world with midas hadin, meaning with justice, everything how it should be. He saw the world couldn't survive. If we only worked on what you earned, the world wouldn't survive. So what does he do? He went and mixed into it midas harachim. What does midas harachim mean? So Hashem, let's just see, Hashem had the concealment of the world. Nothing's getting through. It's a block. Only what he exactly wants, nothing else. He mixed the midas harachim. What's midas harachim mean? So if we take midas hadin by itself, it's the idea going back to the original core concept, concealment. Hashem planned originally, you will never see my presence in the world. In other words, we said before, what's Elikim do? Havaya's job is create, create, create. Elikim is conceal, conceal, conceal. So concealing by itself, meaning midas hadin by itself, you would never see God in this world. Never see him. Never get to the point to say that was a miracle, that was God, that was godly. Never see that. Hashem saw I can't have a world like this. If God's never seen, where's the inspiration going to come from? Now listen to the amazing words he says. What did he do? This Alter Rebbe is saying this, and we learned today in the Hayim Yom, when the Tanya was written, 1795, 1785, the times that he was doing this. He says, what does it mean he's mixed in mercy? The Hainu Eskalis Alikus Ayadei Tzadikim, revelation of godliness through Tzadikim, and the miracles and the wonders that are found in the Torah. Hashem has two ways in this world you can see godliness: miracles and tzaddikim, and not in that order. First he says tzaddikim, righteous people, and then he says miracles. That means you seeing a tzaddik, being in the presence of a tzaddik, learning with a tzaddik, talking to a tzaddik, talking about a tzaddik, is talking about godliness. Because the window that God made, we explained once that one of the metaphors how to understand the role of a tzaddik in this world. Somebody once asked, a million times people asked, why is Chabad so into Rebbe? You talk so much about Rebbe. Why didn't you talk more about God? So one of the answers given that I heard from Rabbi Yael Khan is that the world has like a wall around it, that you can't see God. You can't see him. There's a wall blocking. What's a tzaddik? A tzaddik is a window. A tzaddik is one of those things that allow you to see beyond the world. So if I'm standing by the window and I'm looking out at the mountains beyond it, no one's going to tell me, what's you with your infatuation with windows? What, do you love windows? Is it the glass? Is it the wood? It's not the window. It's when I stand by the window, I can see the outside. Our infatuation with a Rebbe is because only through a Rebbe could speak godliness. Here's one of those sources. His galus of the kos tzaddikim, through a tzaddik, you get to experience godliness. You get to see godliness in this world. And the second thing he says is the miracles that are found in the Torah. There's a very interesting thing about this. What's a miracle? A miracle really has two parts to it. One part of the miracle is the miracle. The second part of the miracle, for example, let me take a step back. Let's take the splitting of the sea. One part of the miracle is that the sea split, whatever it did, splitized. I know it's split. The sea split. And when the sea split, that was a miracle and saved the Jews. That's one thing to talk about. What do we really talk about? That a maidservant saw revelation of godliness that even Yecheskel the prophet didn't see. That means by miracles when you see the revelation of Hashem. So it says when Avraham Avinu had a miracle that happened to him, it says he thanked Hashem that he appeared to him. And it says, what do you mean he appeared to him? There's a miracle. Yeah, there's a miracle. He's having a child or whatever. But the cool thing is, I saw Hashem. Meaning, you could understand two things. One is, it's like a similar in mind. I was thinking about this. I don't know if it's the best metaphor, but it's a good story. By the Rebbe's wedding, 1929. So there was a lot of pickpockets there, a lot of stuff going on there. It was a it was a massive wedding, huge crowds, and the Rebbe's ksuba disappeared. The actual ksuba disappeared. Someone took it or something. It disappeared. And there's a halacha that you cannot be home, even in the same home, without a ksuba. As we know now, by the way, I heard a couple of different stories as the people running, escaping from Ukraine. Yeah. Some people escaped and they remembered taking ksuba with them. Some didn't. They took their passports, they took the jewelry, they took the leichter, and they didn't take the ksuba. On the buses, there were rabbis writing ksubas for people so they could be with their wives. I'm talking about just being in the same place in Yichud, because a man and woman can't be together without a ksuba. So the Rebbe told someone after the ksuba was written, he said the expression, like something along these lines. I got a fresh ksav yad from my father-in-law. Who wrote the ksuba? The previous Rebbe wrote the ksuba for the Rebbe on the spot. Right after the wedding, they sat down. There's no ksuba, it's missing. He wrote him a new one. And we know by Chassidim and by us, all of us, a handwritten note by the Rebbe is the most precious thing in the world. So the Rebbe said, I got another handwritten note. He didn't say I got a ksuba. I got a handwritten note, another handwritten note, because the truth is the original ksuba was, I don't know who wrote it. I don't know how it was done. But here, this was the feeling Rebbe wrote it. So what was asked of the Rebbe?
That was the ketubah from the Rebbe Rayat?
The Frierdiker Rebbe hand wrote a ksuba for the Rebbe. But the Rebbe's wedding, it disappeared. So the Rebbe said, like, oh, fresh ksav yad. In other words, there's two things at a miracle you can go. One is you can go, wow, we were saved by a miracle. Oh, wow. Do you realize Hashem was here just now? Meaning the fact that the miracle happened means it was the presence of God. You see by the splitting of the sea. What's the big talk? The revelations, the whole thing we talk about, and the splitting of the sea. This is that we saw prophecy and they opened up, and the revelation of Hashem, the splitting of the sea. It's because there's much more going on. In other words, a miracle we see sometimes just on the surface. Okay, somebody was saved. But much deeper than that, it was the fact that at that moment there was a revelation of godliness. So the two cracks, so to speak, in the system, where God allows to shine through the godliness, because the whole idea of the shield, the elikim, the magain, is to block godliness. The trick that Hashem did is, you can't see me. I am hidden, you don't see me. But Hashem says, to assist you, I'm giving you two places you can find me, by a tzaddik and by a miracle. So these are the two places, and we're going to continue from here next week to talk about it more, is the idea of there are cracks in the system where we could get some light coming through, we could see some godliness, and these are the places. We'll stop here, and